We have our dunk tank, and we have initialized our variables to begin the game. But our game is going to need some mathematical rules. How are we going to compare the player's guess to the agent's secret number? How will we return a result in the form of a message based on that comparison? To compare the player's guess to the agent's number, we are going to create a new function, but this one will be a little different. Let's click on the function folder and select Make a Function. We will use this function to test each guess, so let's name it Test Guess. But before we hit Done, we are going to add a few parameters. When creating our previous functions, you may have noticed the Add a Parameter buttons at the top. A parameter will ask for a value or values that will be inputted into the function in order to get a value out. We can think of this like a calculator. To return an answer, a calculator needs to have some values put in. In this case, we want to compare two numbers, the guess and the answer. Let's add these to our function by clicking on the number button at the top. Let's name this first one guess. Then, let's click the number button again and name our second one answer. The function will now need to receive these two values whenever it is called. We have our inputs. Now, let's create the code to determine our outputs. There are three possible results. The guess is too high, the guess is too low, or the guess is correct. When we need to choose between multiple conditions, we can use an if-else block. Let's go into our logic folder, get an if-else block, and add it to our function. We have three possible results, so we can click the plus sign to add an else if to our block. To create our if condition, let's get a block to compare values from our logic folder and set it to greater than. To put the guess value on the left, we can click and drag the guess parameter from the function block above. We can then do the same to add our answer value. Since this shows the guess is greater than the answer, we want to output the text too high. If we go into the function folder, we will now see a block called return. Let's add that to our if block. To add the text, also called a string, we can go into the text folder below the Advanced tab and get the first block, which is a text value. In the parentheses, we can type too high. To create our next possible outcome, we can duplicate the condition above, add it to the else if, and switch the greater than to a less than. Since the guess is now less than the answer, we can duplicate the return above and change the text to read too low. The only possible option left is that the guess and answer are the same, in which case the player has won. We can duplicate the return above one more time, add it to the else condition, and change the text to read, "You got it." We now have a function that can calculate the results of each guess the player enters. We can call this function anytime we need to compare two values and get a message back. In our next video, we will code a way for the player to enter their guesses and call the function that will check the results.